fascinated by it, and I wanted to cover it because of that. So, yeah, before I get into it, if you are offended or triggered in any way by true crime cases being covered, especially in an ASMR style, then please click off this video. There's other ones out there that you can watch. I'm not trying to upset anyone or offend anybody. That's not my goal at all. And also, I just wanted to say that I appreciate all of the kind words from everyone who's subscribed and watched my videos. And if you would like to subscribe, I would really appreciate that, and that would be amazing. So, I'm just gonna hop right into this case, and yeah. Danielle Imbo was born Danielle Octobri on August 7th, 1970 in South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to parents John and Phyllis Octobri. Her father was actually a kind of like a local celebrity. He was a singer, and he went by the stage name Johnny October. And he was in a group called the Four Dates in the 1950s, which is how he kind of got popular in the area. So Danielle grew up loving music, and it was a huge part of her life because of her father, and she actually was in a local cover band called the Schoolboys in Philadelphia. She had a really amazing voice that was often compared to Janis Joplin, so kind of like a raspy voice, and she was really good. So she would perform with this band in local venues in her free time, and she also worked as a loan processor at the time, and she worked from home. So she was also a mother to an 18-month-old son named Joe Jr. And she was married to a man named Joe Imbo at one point in time before this case takes place. So now moving on to Richard Petrone. He was born on August 29th, 1969 in Philadelphia to parents Richard and Margaret. Like Danielle, he loved music, especially rock, so they bonded over this later on. And he also loved watching sports, especially the Chicago Bears, and he worked at his family's bakery called Viking Pastries, and he loved his job. He was also a father. He had a child named Angela, who was 14 years old, and apparently he was like the main caretaker of Angela, so I don't know if the mother was involved in Angela's life at all, but he took care of Angela. In the year 2004, Joe Imbo had plans to attend the Super Bowl in Houston, Texas, and he decided to go ahead and follow through with his plans, even though Danielle, his wife at the time, was homesick with their child. He was like, "Sorry that you're sick, babe, I gotta go." And once he got back home, he told Danielle that he met another woman on the plane ride down to Houston, and he was in love with her and he wanted to get a divorce. So obviously Danielle was shook about that, and she was like, okay. But apparently they had had some issues before this, some space, and she just wanted to try to focus on her son and getting her life together. And she was also feeling a little bit overwhelmed and conflicted about the relationship with Joe, because he was trying to get her back now at a point after, during this whole process. Joe's like, oh, that relationship that I told you about with that random woman from the plane, it didn't work out. Big shocker, right? And he wanted Danielle back, of course, and she was like, no, I don't want anything to do with you, basically. So she decided to follow through with the divorce, and apparently he would have explosive outbursts over the fact that she didn't want to get back with him. And once things were starting to look up for Danielle and the divorce was finalized, she began wanting to have fun again and get back into the swing of her life. So about a month or so after they had taken their break, Richard and Danielle took their break. On February 19th, 2005, Richard called his sister Christine and asked if she wanted to go to the bar to see some live music with him. And at the time that he called, Christine was with Danielle, and Christine said that she didn't really want to go because she had to work the next morning, but Danielle was like, you know what, I'm gonna go. So she decides to go with him, and Richard comes to pick her up in his truck, and I will talk more about his truck later on because it's important. And they go to a bar called Abilene's on Philadelphia's South Street, and they met up with friends, and it was a couple named Anthony and Michelle. And according to everyone that saw them that night, especially the couple that they were with, Danielle and Richard seemed like really, really great. Nothing was weird. They were kind of all over each other. They were kissing. It seems like they were kind of rekindling things in their relationship. And they also were apparently discussing their upcoming week and what they had going on, kind of comparing schedules as if they were planning another date. Anthony and Michelle asked the couple if they wanted to go to another bar, but they declined because they both had things going on the next day. And notably, Danielle had a hair appointment the next day at 11 a.m. with Christine, her friend, and Richard's sister. So at around 11:45 p.m., they were getting ready to leave the bar, and Richard planned on dropping off Danielle at her home in Mount Laurel before returning to his home in South Philly. And this is the last time that the couple would ever be seen. So sorry, I'm reading my notes from my computer. The next morning, Danielle missed her appointment with Christine, and people tried to get into contact with her and Richard, but the calls went to voicemail, and the families became more concerned, and Danielle's brother John decided to go check on her because he had a spare key to her house. So he gets inside the house and nothing is out of place. It's completely normal. And John, her brother, also knew that Joe Jr., Danielle's son, was supposed to be dropped off by Joe Imbo, her ex-husband, that day, and she would not miss this at all. She cared so much for her son. She had never been late for anything involving her son before. So when Joe arrived to drop off Joe Jr., Danielle's family was there, I guess, but she wasn't. At this point, it's past 3 p.m. and she's still nowhere to be found, and they're still not answering calls. So the families of Richard and Danielle were close, like I said, so it seems like they had kind of gotten into contact with each other and realized that they were both missing. So they kept their hopes up, but they became increasingly concerned, and they called the police eventually to report them as missing. And apparently I've heard mixed responses after doing my research on this case, but I'm pretty sure that the cops did that stupid thing where they told them they had to wait 48 hours, which is a lie. If you ever are in a situation where you want to report someone as missing and they tell you to wait 48 hours, it's a lie. So regardless, I don't know what happened, but the families did their own search, and they were on the lookout Richard's truck, which was a black 2001 Dodge Dakota. As I mentioned, it's important. They looked along the roads where they would have been, like along the roads from the bar to their houses, and they searched all night, but they found nothing. And they did this literally all night. They looked on bridges and waterways everywhere, including the Walt Whitman, Ben Franklin, and Betsy Ross bridges. And they continued their efforts the next day. So volunteers, family members, friends they kind of came up with like a plan, and they used a grid search to cover 100 miles in every direction, and John, Danielle's brother, even spent over $1,000 hiring a police officer to use a helicopter to look over the city. And it literally seemed as if they had disappeared into thin air, because these searches came up with nothing. So there were also no witnesses that actually saw them leave the bar in Richard's truck, and there was no evidence found from any of the toll bridge cameras after they left the bar, and then their credit cards, cell phones, etc. were all looked into, and it didn't seem like they had used any of those things. So that's really all of like the main evidence that we have with it, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the theories behind it, or that people have about it. So some people think that they ended up in a body of water, like sinking to the bottom of the water in the truck. And one body of water specifically that's been brought up is the nearby Delaware River, but those who live in Philadelphia don't think this would be likely, because it isn't easy to access the water from the road. And I think it's a possibility for sure. I just think it's weird that there's literally no evidence at all that came up, like nothing floated to the top of the water or anything like that. But it is definitely a possibility. And also, another theory is that they were murdered after being carjacked, and then the carjackers would take the truck to a chop shop and sell it for parts. And there were over 13,000 vehicles stolen in the Philadelphia area in 2004 alone. So this isn't a completely unlikely theory, but it's pretty unlikely. I feel like that someone would go to the extent of murdering them. And also, it's not like he had a Lamborghini. Like, why would they do that over his truck? You know, like, it was apparently a nice truck, but not like a super, super nice truck. With the carjacking, apparently the FBI and the Philadelphia Stolen Car Squad looked into this and found no evidence of this being something that happened. And the fact that the FBI got involved is like pretty intense. So another theory that people have is that Joe Imbo, Danielle's ex-husband, had something to do with it, but he was cleared, and there was like nothing really that could show that he did anything himself. But then that leads us into the murder for hire theory, and some people think that either Joe or someone else hired someone to murder them. But you know, it's just so strange, because they hadn't planned on meeting up that day. Like, it was very spur of the moment. So it's just so bizarre that, like, somebody, if that is what happened, somebody would have to be, like, tracking their every move. reports, with the FBI reporting that an extensive investigation to date has generated some promising leads. However, neither they nor the vehicle have been located. And in March 22nd, 2022, a private search and recovery dive team announced that they were actively working on the case. So I'm hoping that maybe, I'm not sure if that dive team is still doing their work, but I really hope that eventually some things are turned up, because it's just insane that they literally vanished into thin air. Like, there's nothing indicating that this was a voluntary disappearance. So, and Richard was like an amazing guy by all accounts. I know that people can say that. Like, people said Ted Bundy was a great guy, you know what I mean? But I mean, what purpose would Richard have for like kidnapping Danielle? You know, like, it's just so bizarre. I do think that Joe Imbo, her ex-husband, is a little bit sus, just because he had this rage and anger over the fact that she wouldn't take him back, and clearly he's a very spontaneous and sporadic individual, because he just decides to divorce his wife over some random chick that he meets on a plane, like that kind of shit. So I don't know, I really don't know what happened, but I truly hope that one day we will find out, and I hope for the sake of their families as well that more can be uncovered, because it's just so upsetting and crazy that it happened this quickly. Also, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure I read or heard somewhere that Angela, Richard's daughter, was working at the bakery that Richard worked at, the family business that he loves so much. At least at one point she was, and I just think that's so sweet that she is doing that and carrying on the legacy. And I also read that, you know, these families were really close at one point. Like, Richard and Danielle's families knew each other for a long time, but apparently since their disappearances, they've kind of drifted apart, which is sad, because, you know, it's like they want to have someone or something to point their finger to of what happened, but they don't have answers. So I think they kind of have been blaming each other in certain ways over what happened. I don't really know, but I don't know if they've, you know, reconnected since. Hopefully they have. But anyway, that is going to be the end of this video, and like I said, I really hope that one day we will have more answers about this case, and for the sake of Danielle and Richard's families, you know, I really hope that they get the answers that they deserve and that they need to have closure. I'm sorry, there's like a weird noise going on outside right now. I don't know if you can hear it. But yeah, that is going to be the end of this video, and thank you so much for watching / listening. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.